Hi, everybody. We are live here at Lit Chick. I'm Alex Hoops. Hi, everyone. I am back from a brief hiatus. I know Jenna Payon has been killing the summer Lit Chick game, but I am back with a special guest, Taylor Hahn, at this time at 7 p.m. So excited to have Taylor here. She is the author of The Lifestyle, this gorgeous book that matches my nails ever so slightly. That was intentional. And I'm just so excited to have Taylor here because this book is incredible. I'll tell you a little bit about Taylor, and then she can tell you a little bit more about herself. Taylor Hahn is a writer and lawyer based in Los Angeles. She is a graduate of Loyola Marymount University and Fordham University Law School. Shout out. And The Lifestyle is her first novel. So we just want to briefly say, too, before we get into the Lit Chick stuff, folks, if you are tuning in for the first time today, A Mighty Blaze has been kind of following the news all day. And we just want to say, we are with you guys. It's very angry making, everything that's happening with SCOTUS right now. And, A Mighty Blaze always strives to be a good resource whenever we can to use our platform for good. So we will be linking to some abortion funds where you can donate. And you can keep following us on all of our platforms to kind of see how we're engaging in the conversation. If you can get out and make your voice heard, we are happy to amplify. So I'm really proud of Jenna Bloom for getting that started for us. So I know it's a hard day. I think a great thing about The Lifestyle is it's a perfect escape. Yes. We have to practice self-care in these times too. Right now, it's so easy to get burnt out on the news. And I think that reading is such a good way to kind of keep checking in with yourself. So, Taylor, I was wondering if you could tell the folks a little bit about your book. I know that's the Amazon copy and all that stuff we see online, but I want to hear straight from the author. What is The Lifestyle about?
Okay. Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to be here. So The Lifestyle,
gorgeous book,
is about a lawyer in New York named Georgina Wagner. And she is convinced that she has the perfect life. She feels like she's got everything set, perfect job, great friends, apartment that she loves in New York, but most of all, that she has chosen the perfect partner in life. And she was very strategic about her selection of her partner. She thinks that she's got love really figured out, and she knows how to make a good divorce-proof match for herself. So she's married to this man named Nathan. And I'm not giving anything away because this is on the book jacket, but she catches him cheating right from the get-go, basically. Yeah. And she thinks, no, this is not going to derail my life plan. I'm not going to let this man decide my future. I didn't want to get divorced. I chose my path very carefully. So instead, she thinks, how can I fix this? And she decides, okay, if he wants to sleep with other women, then it'll be on my terms. And if he can't play by the rules, then I will change the rules. So she decides that they are going to become swingers. So they join The Lifestyle. And she happens to have two very good friends. They are having kind of relationship troubles of their own. One of the characters is Nora, and she's been married to her husband for 12 years. They have 3 kids together. It's hard what they're dealing with money-wise, child rearing. And she feels like her husband doesn't see her as a sexual woman anymore. She feels like her husband looks at her as the school principal. And so she thinks, okay, maybe this could help us too. And then she has another friend, Felix, who he is dating a woman who is very upfront about the fact that she practices ethical non-monogamy. And so he feels like, okay, she didn't hide that from me, so I need to respect that part of her. And so all 3 couples end up joining The Lifestyle together. And then antics ensue.
Exactly. Well, I think all of these characters are so well-rounded. I just was very impressed by how well I knew all of them and really ended up loving all of them, even those that sort of disappointed me ultimately. I have to confess, I'm a Kansas native. And so all of the drops about Nathan being from Kansas and wanting to go to Kansas, I was like, I know this boy. There are merits to the Kansas lifestyle, if you will.
Yeah.
But I thought that was a really fun detail. And I just think the book is so clever in a way that it uses the lifestyle, which is such a good hook right away. Like swinging is this idea. I had always thought in my mind when I heard that word about like the 70s or 80s, it's kind of like a retro thing. But they call it the lifestyle, right? Calling it swinging is like de rigueur. That's like no longer the term, which I loved. And one question that I wanted to start with, because I've seen this in some of the copy for this book, as well as our shared agent, Jamie, pitched this to me, that it's inspired by Jane Austen's Emma a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just kind of curious, like, was that something that you started the idea with? Did that come to you later on? Does it feel, and I don't know, how is it connected, would you say?
Yeah, it came later actually. And I would say it's not a retelling in the same way that like a straight retelling is, I guess, where the plot is very similar. It came later through the character of Georgina, because you've read the book, so you know that she's really she can be meddling.
Yeah.
But it's really coming from a good place in her heart. Like she legitimately wants her friends to be happy in love.
Right.
And that's very similar to the character of Emma. But that's a really hard character to write, because readers don't like to read about a character who knows everything. Obviously, that person has to get broken down at some point. Like they have to face the music that they actually do not know everything.
Totally.
That's part of her arc. That's what makes it satisfying. But I really looked to Emma for inspiration. I read it several times and I just took notes on her way of thinking and how she felt like she was Harriet's savior, in the same way that Georgina feels like she's Nora's savior.
Right.
And introducing her to the lifestyle and helping her become like this stronger woman who's more in control of her sexuality, when really all along it's Georgina who actually needs to take a good hard look at herself.
Yeah, totally. And I think, Emma is such an interesting comp in this space, because Georgina has to do some sort of mental gymnastics, right, to arrive at the conclusion that she gets to, which is that we need to become, polyamorous ostensibly in order to save our marriage, which is a tricky conclusion to get to. And I think what's so successful about the lifestyle is you really get the readers there fast. Like I had very few moments when I was like, wait a minute, like this sounds bad. Because you have a protagonist that is so, I won't say delusional, it's not the right word, but like Emma, is able to convince herself that like I am doing something that is so helpful, so brave, so, open, so groundbreaking, that she's just in it so much. She doesn't quite see the forest for the trees. And I think that it's done really successfully in the first act of this book. So yeah. I love it. I was also thinking of Clueless. Like, it's funny. I read Emma in high school, and then I feel like Clueless has replaced it in my brain, that now I'm like, oh, Cher is like Emma. Like, it's just completely mapped onto one another. But
yeah. And we love Cher, even though we're like, okay, she's a brat. But
she is, yeah.
We are like 100% behind her. And that's what I wanted to achieve for Georgina too.
Which absolutely nailed it too. And one of the relationships in the book, I'm glad we're talking about this book today, because I think that this book really puts women first, like in every scene. You have a setup, right? A hook where there is adultery, right? Her husband cheats on her, which is tricky in fiction, I will say. Some people are very like bothered by that. But the way that it's handled almost immediately is something that I hadn't seen before, which is that Georgina sort of takes in the other woman, Meredith, who's a junior at the law firm where she works. And they have a relationship beyond just, the incident itself. How did you come to that? I mean, was that something that you were trying to do intentionally? Is it something you were hoping to see? I'm just kind of curious about that dynamic.
Yeah, that was really intentional, because as I was writing the novel, unfortunately, the way it would go in real life is that Nathan, Georgina's husband, would have no consequences. I mean, maybe he would get a slap on the wrist, but really that's it. He wouldn't get fired. His career would not be over. Like, if anything, it would be a rumor that, people were
Yeah,
like,
he's hot stuff, right?
yeah, exactly. And then Meredith would get so talked about, and there would be so much gossip that and that it would be her career that would get derailed. Like she
Right.
would probably end up leaving the firm and having to go work somewhere else. So I really wanted to show a different story where Georgina, who is already a person that like doesn't take shit, was like, no, this is not the future that I'm going to allow for her. This is Nathan's fault. He was older. He's the partner. She's a junior. He took advantage of her.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
so, in line with her kind of mentality where she feels like she can help everybody, she decides that she's going to take Meredith under her wing. And even though in the beginning she comes across so strong, it actually ends up being a really positive relationship, I think, for them both. That was a story that I really wanted to tell.
Yeah, I thought it was just so refreshing that she wasn't recoiling from this woman who had like ruined her life, but she was seeing as an opportunity to connect or help. Or I just thought I couldn't think of when I had seen that on the page recently. So I think that's like a big success of this book. And I wanted to ask too, I mean, hopefully that this doesn't relate to Meredith's story either, but you've been to law school. I think Fordham is where Georgina and her crew also went. I could be wrong about that. What was it like revisiting that? Was that something you were thinking? I mean, I have many friends who are lawyers and I hear lots of stories, but when you were in law school where you're like, I have to write a novel about this, or was it sitting in the back of your brain?
You know, it's funny because I didn't think that people would really want to read about being a lawyer. Like, I think since it was my day job, I just assumed that it was boring and nobody would be interested. So in in an earlier draft, I would show Georgina going to work and leaving work, but I would never show her at work doing work.
Right.
Sorry. And then I got the feedback that's like, it would actually really be interesting to see Georgina as a lawyer. Like it would add a lot of layers to her. And I might need to tell my husband to bring me a glass of water.
That's what husbands are for. Taylor's husband, water. My fiance is away, so I'm on my own. I have to get my own water. Sad day.
Anyway,
but yeah, I thought that like her lawyering, I mean, I found it fascinating. I've recently been watching I'm a Legally Blonde stan, like through and through, and I was listening to the musical soundtrack, which is highly underrated. They need to like bring that Legally Blonde the musical back. But like, and Georgina is more competent than I think.
Thank you.
Okay, husband appearance we love, very on brand. But Georgina's a more competent lawyer than Elle was in the beginning. But there is something really refreshing about not just wearing the profession as a sort of character trait of like, this is an indicator that this person is smart, but you actually get to see them doing the work. And it makes the fact that she wants to support Meredith all the more powerful because she's good at it. And so I thought that was really refreshing too.
I really wanted to show her as a strong character with a job that plenty of women have in real life.
Yeah.
But for some reason, like in fiction and the movies, women either are not lawyers, they always like work at a magazine or something. Or if they are lawyers, it's made into a joke, like with Elle Wood. So I wanted to show her being powerful and enjoying it.
Yeah. She's a partner at this firm too. I mean, we're not meeting her as she's just embarking on this career. We're meeting her in the middle of an already quite successful career too.
Yeah. Yeah. It was hard because you want your character to have a full arc, over the course of the story. But I never wanted her to quit her job.
Right.
As to show like a satisfying arc. She does kind of rethink things. I'm so sorry that I'm coughing this much.
You are totally fine. Litchick is a safe space to cough and do all manner of other things. And I can vamp for you if you need to. Yeah, no, I think that like we should see, I want to see like a rom-com about like an accountant or like just like a DMV person, just like it doesn't. I think all of these we're getting a little crazy with the jobs. I'll say it as a lip
Yeah.
chick host. So I
Yeah.
thought it was really refreshing, and also the fact that she's a lawyer. All the stereotypes about lawyers makes the lifestyle funnier, maybe. And I also just love the idea that her friends are lawyers too. So when they're like rolling up to these events, just like a bunch of lawyers, and everyone's like, "Is this like was something
Yeah.
happening?"
What's
Um,
really funny is that at very early, like when I was first conceiving the novel, I wrote an outline, which I did not stick to at all, but
mhm.
I had Georgina become a lawyer for a sex club, and she was gonna be like this crusader for this sex club that New York City was trying to close down. But then I was thinking, like, why would New York City close down a sex club? I guess I could have said they were hygienic issues or something,
Yeah,
but that's gross.
there was like a brief moment, I think, when they're in one of the bars where they were talking about the like Lysol wipes or something, and I was like, I'm glad we're
Yeah,
like touching on that because that's definitely in the back of my mind every time.
it's a real thing. That's very accurate. They have a lot
Yeah,
of cleaning
which
products
is good. I
available.
mean, as they should be if they want to stay open, like any good establishment.
Yeah,
Um, I thought that it was so fun. So now we can talk. We've gotten the lawyer stuff out. We can talk about the sex stuff. I know it's
okay.
why so many people are watching. But like that was so fun. You don't have to answer this, but like it seems like we have some intel about that environment, which I'm obsessed with. This idea of like monogamy is sort of an evolving conversation. I know a lot of people of my age group are sort of thinking about this, and
Mhm.
what's interesting about the lifestyle is that it's almost all couples that are monogamous initially that are then entering it to like shake things up.
Yeah.
Um, did this idea come to you just because you thought, well, that'll sell some books? Or I'm kind of curious how you arrived at it.
Um, not from a sales perspective, but as a reader, I did think it would make a fun book. I
Yeah,
didn't think I'd ever read anything like that before, and I felt like it could be really funny. I always wanted it to be funny, which I hope it is.
it totally is,
um, to
100%.
be a fun experience because I think that's natural to the real experience. I mean, thinking through it as I was writing, like couples obviously do this because it's fun for them. If
Right.
it weren't, then I don't think people would do it. So that felt very true to the real experience. And then you mentioned that in this particular book, the couples are monogamous and then they kind of transition into that experience. And that for me was kind of the journey that I was on as well, because I didn't have any experience in the lifestyle when I started writing. So I personally went into it with my own biases and like
Mhm.
preconceived notions, and then did a lot of research and opened my mind to it. So I think I was able to connect with my characters more on that level versus if I were coming at it as a writer who had like, spent a decade in the lifestyle myself.
Right. Yeah, totally. It feels like a very like fish out of water experience. And every time I have a question where I'm like, well, how are they going to sort this out? You would get an answer for it because you know, Georgina is asking those same questions herself,
Yeah.
which um, I think is really fun. And I love the fact too that in this book, I mean, there's always this trope of like we want to be in an open relationship. I've seen that in a couple of books, but I haven't seen it driven by the women, which I
Mhm.
think in this book, Nora and Georgina and Alina, all three of the sort of central female characters in the book, are the ones that are really sort of driving the lifestyle to begin with, and it's the men who are resistant, which I think kind of combats a couple of stereotypes that people might have about polyamory or the lifestyle in general.
Yeah,
Um,
that's exactly right. I'm really happy to hear you say that because that is something that I wanted to do. There's this line in the book where Alina and Georgina are talking, and Alina says, "It's not a safe assumption that all men want is sex." And that's a really important line because it is the women who want to do this, like you said, and the men who are resistant, which I think it was intentional because I just wanted to subvert that expectation that husbands would be like pushing for this because they want to have sex with other women and the wives are just going along with it.
Yeah, totally. I
Yeah.
mean, I think it's very smart. And not only is it empowering for the women, but we get told all the time, like, all men want is sex and they're thinking not with their brains, but with their penises. And
Yeah.
I think all the men in this book, as I said, despite the fact that I didn't love all of them,
Yeah.
they're like complicated people that have nuance and don't just want, a physical connection and have other ambitions. And so I just thought that that was really refreshing to read. It felt real. I mean, yes, it's a romance book and it's an escape, but it also felt recognizable, like those maybe somewhere out there. I mean, I'm going to marry a nice boy, but there are men like that are not, one track mind.
Yeah.
So I thought that that was really smart.
Yeah, exactly. I really wanted the men, even the bad ones in this book, like Nathan the cheater, I don't want to give away the ending, but I wanted to have every character have their own redemption, I guess.
Yeah.
So, even the people who do bad things in this book are going through something. Like Ari was struggling to be a good dad, but we kind of see, what was going on behind the scenes there.
Yeah, totally. It's very smart. And I was thinking there are a lot of characters in this book. That's kind of one question I have from like a writing perspective here. So
Yeah.
sometimes you get the romance going and there will be, the foil to the female protagonist, or I guess any gendered protagonist, and then you have a foil to the love interest. And so you're really dealing with two central people and then maybe a B plot with these other external characters. You're
Mhm.
balancing like six and then plus like Whitaker, like seven
Yeah.
people here.
Yeah, it was
Was that something? Did you mean to do that? Was it hard? Like, I'm just curious how you got there.
So, I think I got started on that path because in the beginning, I thought that it would be great for creating tension if pre-existing friends went into the experience together. Because in real life, I could imagine, like, if you went to a sex club by yourself, you might feel a little bit freer to do whatever because it's only strangers. But
Right.
if you're with your best friend
Yeah.
and you have never looked at each other, in this sexual way before, and then suddenly you're in this environment, that creates a lot of tension. And so I thought from a writing perspective, it would probably increase the stakes if I had friends do the experience together. So that's where the idea got started. But then I think what I liked about it, even though it was hard to balance, is just that they all have a very different experience in the lifestyle, but it's all positive for all of them
Mm-hmm.
in the end. And I liked being able to show that like people
Thank you, Jenna. Amazing.
people people I lost my train of thought. They all
Everyone has a lifestyle.
Yeah, they all
Right.
have different experiences, but it's all positive, and I just wanted to show that people can go into it for different reasons and get something, different out of it. And so having a bigger cast allowed me to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is a big cast. I mean, there's another thing. I don't know if you have like I would make this a movie so hard had I the power, time, or money, but it really felt very cinematic in terms of the, like, dynamic things that were going on. The dialogue was very smart and snappy and intelligent, and I liked that there were a lot of people. I mean, it made your brain have to work a little bit harder while you were reading to, like, follow each person's wants and needs, and I think that that was very successful. So we have a fun question from the audience that I'll
Okay.
just ask because it's movie related. Who would
Okay.
you cast as the characters? That's a great question for people who are like getting to know the book, kind of helps you figure out like who's who.
Yeah, this is a great question, and I have cast the whole book, except
Amazing.
I cannot find someone for Georgina. I truly can't. I don't know if that's like a main character thing where
I think
I'm
that's like a success on your end. Like you've written someone who's like
Yeah.
completely her own deal. Yeah,
Have you ever seen Jane the Virgin?
of course. Yes.
Okay, the hot guy, like the dad, the actual dad?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
That's who I really wanted for Ari.
I love that. I could see
Yeah.
that. Ari was giving such hot dad energy and nice Jewish boy energy, both of which are in my wheelhouse. I gravitated toward. Yeah, I see that totally.
Yeah, and then for Nora, I think her first name is Simone. I can't remember her last name though, but she played the best friend in The New Girl. Did
Oh
you watch that
yeah, yeah, yeah.
show? Yeah, she's
Yeah,
beautiful. I really wanted her for Nora.
I love it. Yeah, I mean the
Fingers
characters
crossed.
they're all so funny. And I love too how I think it was Felix. I mean, you kept describing people very astutely about being an eyewear model, which I was just like, yeah, like I know exactly what that is. Like this had the whole thing, I think it was something about lawyers in New York City and happening in the fall. Like I was just seeing like all the peacoat styling and the tortoiseshell frames. It was very whatever that aesthetic is. I'm sure like the Zoomers have a name for it, but I really liked it.
That's perfect. Yeah, I think I have a thing for catalog models because I also describe Whitaker as being the hottest guy in a Patagonia catalog.
Yes, right. Fire. Absolutely
He's like the
fire.
perfect middle ground because like they're hot, but they're not uncomfortably hot.
Totally. I like Patagonia catalog model also is nice because for me, I'm like very much an indoor kid. So I'm admiring it. I'm like, oh, you're hiking? Like fun. Like
Yeah.
that's not my energy, but happy for you. Um, I thought it was so funny. I mean, all the guys in this are like very hot guys. Even
Yeah.
Nathan, poor Kansas Nathan,
Yeah.
has his moments. He has
Yeah.
his moments.
Yeah. He's never, he's not that bad. I mean, he makes a huge mistake,
Yeah.
but I wanted all the people to, have a heart.
This is so funny they were posting this because I clocked this too, Jenna, that you turmeric colored. I mean, it's
I
just
had a
so on
very
the nose.
specific vision.
I'm obsessed. Another character I want to talk about. I want to talk about writing successes, and then I want to know a little bit more if you want to show behind the scenes of how you got here. But there's a
Okay.
scene when Nora takes her kids and meets with Georgina, Alice's teacup, on the Upper West Side, which is like
Mhm.
one of my favorite places. I've had many an intense conversation in that little back room. But Nora is a character we get to see who's a mom, right? So she got pregnant in law school. She has like a early teenager and then little kids. And I just wanted to like commend you. I myself am not a mom, but I do have friends with children and family with children. Nora's depicted so well here. She's a combination of frazzled and also just like on top of her shit that I think it's just like a shout out to moms everywhere. I don't know whether you were drawing from like a sister or a friend, but I was so impressed.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I'm not a mom either. So I was, yes, looking to other people as an example. I did get a piece of feedback early on that she was too frazzled and it was too stereotypical, which was a great piece of feedback
Yeah.
because I don't want to convey that mothers are like ah, all the time.
I
And
mean, I'm not a mom and I'm blah all the time. So what does that say? Yeah.
yeah, so that was helpful because really she struggles like all moms do, I think. But she also loves her children so much. So even though it's so hard, she wouldn't trade it for the world. I mean, she doesn't feel like she needs to go back and rewrite history. It's just that she's not going to undermine how hard it can be on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
Specifically because like one of her kids has horrible allergies and another one has dyslexia. And so these are just the realities of her life that she has to deal with.
Yeah. And she still finds time to look hot at a sex club. Like
Yeah, exactly.
inspiring, honestly. I thought it was so much fun. Yeah, I mean, all the characters are just fabulous. So I kind of wanted to get back. So you went to law school, Taylor.
Yeah.
Are you practicing law right now? Can I
Yeah,
ask
I
that?
am.
Okay.
Mhm.
So did you write this book when? And also why and how and with whom? I gotta know. I'm so curious.
Yeah. So I always loved writing, like a lot. When I was in high school, I wanted to write YA novels, actually. That was kind of my dream. But I was really scared to do it. Like, in retrospect, sometimes I think, "Oh, maybe I should have gone to college and studied creative writing or something." But another part of me feels like I had to grow up, like, before I could actually do it.
Mhm.
So, I went to law school thinking that was a responsible decision, I guess. And I learned a lot in law school. I mean, I did learn how to become a good writer. I think
Totally.
that law school, in a way, was like my MFA because
Mhm.
we have to take a lot of writing classes and write all the time and learn how to make an argument and eliminate extra words and have your writing flow in a way that really makes sense. And I learned what the passive voice was. I didn't know that before.
Yeah.
um, but I guess the dream was always in the back of my mind. But I also had to pay my loans off. So I went to work for a firm and I was working my butt off.
Yeah.
And then I thought for fun, I would take a writing class. And after that, I just got hooked again. And when I wasn't that happy in my lawyer job because I was doing a lot of financial stuff, which really wasn't my vibe, like I always
Mhm.
wanted to do something creative, I just started writing on the side. And as I got more and more and more into it, it became more and more important to me that I finished. I felt like if I didn't give it a real shot, I would always look back on it with regret.
Yeah. I mean, I relate to that. I finished the first draft of my novel while working a job I didn't particularly like. So there's
Yeah,
something to be said for that. And also just like you've come so far. Like kind of once you start doing it, you're like, well, we're here. Like
yeah.
might as well. That's awesome.
It can be motivating for sure. I mean, I kind of saw writing as my outlet when I was having a really hard day.
Yeah.
I think kept me going.
It's so cathartic. I mean, like, even today, I mean, this is how I guess you're a writer, or maybe everybody feels this way of like dealing with shit in the world. There's something about writing as a form of process or like processing or therapy or just analysis that I find, I don't know, it's like addicting in a way once you find your rhythm with it.
It is addicting. I
But
truly do feel addicted.
yeah. I feel like we're similar personality types with along with Georgina of like once
Yeah,
you're committed to it.
exactly.
Um So I have a question too. I saw that you dedicated the book to Crystal Hannah Kim,
Yeah.
who I love her book too. Are
Oh,
you writing friends first? Are you life friends
life
or
forms. It's an
whatever
actual
that means?
total coincidence.
College friends.
Like, yeah. So I met her because we both Teach for America.
Oh my God, fun.
And
Okay.
we met through that program at Institute where they send you to all live together for 6 weeks before you get your own classroom.
Mhm.
And we became friends there and decided to live together. And then Crystal said that when TFA was done, she was going to get her MFA. And I was so jealous. And I really admired her because she was so brave. I felt like she was like, this is what I love. This is what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
So, of it was very inspiring to me, and then when I really started writing, she helped me a lot. Like, it's mysterious how a book goes from a file on your computer to an actual.
Relatable.
So
Yeah.
she helped me. She taught me what a query letter was. She read mine. She gave feedback. She would when I queried an agent, if she had some connection to them, she would offer to send a note on my behalf.
Mhm.
She read an early draft, everything. She was just like my mentor goddess.
Yeah, that's fantastic, and it's so important. It's something I feel really passionate about because I would not have gotten my agent were it not for like all the people at A Mighty Blaze or in my life that connected me. So it's something I feel like is so important to kind of give back because it's useful to have that network and it's such a mysterious thing, this tricky publishing world. So
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
I mean, for all the writers out there, having a community is just essential. I got mine through Catapult. That's where I was taking my classes,
Oh,
and
that's great. Yeah, shout out to Catapult. They're
yeah,
fantastic.
huge. And I would always, when, sometimes you just have a workshop with a really great flow and everybody is working so well together and you have a great feeling and community. And I would always try to stay in touch with them and the teacher too. And I built great connections, and that has helped so much.
Yeah, absolutely. I also find too, like, I know it's funny that you mentioned going to law school. There's certain places where you feel like you meet people, right? Whether it's college or high school or grad school or any of those things. And the writing community can kind of be a great space to make adult friends.
Yeah.
Much like a sex club. Was that a good transition? Probably not. I don't know if you would want to like hang out with those people. But I thought, I mean, I just thought that the premise was really interesting. And did you start at Catapult, like writing romance? I mean, that's an angle there's so much going on in this book, right? It's like about, you know, moms, law, being a woman, sex, marriage, New York City, all of these things. But it does have this romantic element to it. It does have a happily ever after, or HEA. You might see that abbreviation all over the internet. Did it start that way, or like, I'm kind of curious.
No, I would say it went through a lot of transitions. When I first started writing it, there was a character who is actually not in the book anymore because she just really didn't make sense. She wasn't really true to this experience. And she was having a really, really hard time, like in life generally, and turned to the lifestyle, but her experience in it was more negative. And that wasn't the story that I wanted to tell. So I ended up cutting that.
Was that like a lot of the book? I'm curious. We have a lot of writers watching, so I'm always curious when people say they cut. I'm like, how much was that?
Yeah, I would say, when I made that decision, I'd probably written like 150 pages. Okay. But just to be clear, they weren't good. So it wasn't like a huge loss.
Because important. You can write 150 bad pages. Normalize that. It happens.
Oh, yeah. I mean, in the beginning, I didn't know how to write a novel. So, like, I think if you want to write a novel, step one is figuring out what a novel is and practicing it with the expectation that it'll probably get cut. And then when you have a better sense of what story you want to tell and how to tell it, then the pages will start flowing.
Yeah, they find their way in. It's super interesting. I mean, I also didn't do an MFA program. I'm like kind of figuring my way through the darkness with it. Having like worked with a lot of novels, edited a lot of novels, published a lot of novels, but there's nothing quite like getting your hands dirty and in it. There's no better way to figure it out.
Practice is everything.
Yeah, totally. Is there a part of the lifestyle that we're reading and loving that like is a kind of nascent original scene, moment, joke even?
Well, I mean, I would say the first sex party where
I figured that was the case. I feel like you just needed to send that out and people are like, okay.
Yeah. You know, originally that was a more boring scene. She went to the party, she got paired up, went to a bedroom, they had sex, and she went home.
Right.
And that's probably fairly typical of how some of these things go, but I really wanted to surprise readers and give them something unexpected, and have it be really fun. Because like I was saying earlier, I think that's what people want when they go to a sex party in real life, is to have a good time.
Totally. So I think,
that's where the role-playing came.
100%. And I think that's like, I hope that this, how do I phrase this? There's romance books with hot sex, of which there is a very hot sex scene in this book towards the end that was just like, damn, she did it. But there are several sex scenes in this book that like aren't that sexy or are kind of awkward or silly. And I think that like, you know, the ability to go through all those, it's not going to be like hot, steamy every single time. It was just very real. It felt very refreshing to read.
Yeah, I agree with you. I'm glad to hear you say that, because my goal in telling this story was to be surprising, frank, like they talk very frankly about sex. And sometimes silly. That is definitely a word that was on my mind as well. I did not expect it ever to be like 50 Shades, which is basically just designed to turn on the reader.
Right.
And it just goes from sex scene to sex scene to sex scene.
Yeah, I'm sure people like are skipping to be like, okay.
Yeah. And I also wanted people, regardless of their comfort with their own sexuality or their experience with the lifestyle, to feel like they could pick up this book. You know, it's not just like hardcore porn.
Yeah. It's not just hardcore porn. That's a great blurb. Somebody write that on the back of the paperback. I don't know. Maybe they won't want to put that on. I don't know.
Yeah,
It depends on the publisher, honestly. But I don't know. I think that that's very successful. It feels very, I don't know, very like liberating, I think, and very accessible for that reason. I want to ask you about the cover too,
Okay, yeah.
because I love this take. I see romance novels all the time. My job, just every day in my life, that's the world I'm in. This kind of like animated cover, cartoon cover is like very trendy. But I love the lifestyle is sort of like a play on that, honestly.
Yeah.
Like you still have your illustrations, but the vibe is giving like maybe like a 60s or 70s TV show animated opening. Like I'm watching Sabrina the Teenage Witch or
Oh my God,
Genie or
true.
Is that what we're going for? I'm just curious about the story behind it. I can see her like blinking those big eyes and having like a little tinkle bell in the background.
Yeah. Well, they did make, I don't know if you've seen the book trailer, her eyes close and it's amazing. Yeah, when I look at this, I think of it as like pop art, which I really like. I think that it's very flirtatious, which goes along really nicely with the book. And it's really fun too, which goes along with the book. But also, I mean, when you look into Regina's eyes, she's definitely up to something.
She really is. She's up to something. We're not sure whether it's good or bad.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I just think it's a fabulous cover. I was considering putting like a bold red lip on, but for this interview, but every time I do that, I kind of fuck it up. So
me too.
But she does, and that's impressive. And I love that there's two guys on either side. I mean, just right away, it's just like, okay, what is this about?
Yeah.
And this big picture window, which is like an industrial, I loved it so much. I went to NYU. I lived in New York for several years, and then I lived in Brooklyn. And I could picture those buildings so well because you walk past those like big lofts, and you're like, okay, like what's in there? I've been told some of them are like factories, or like that's where they put the halal carts, or like then some of them I'm like, is this a sex dungeon?
Yeah, I hope so.
Is the answer yes? Can you reveal? Do you know for a fact?
Yeah. Well, I went to one, it wasn't a sex party, but I went to one party in Tribeca in like a really cool old factory building. It was like an architectural thing because my very good friend is an architect. So there were a lot of cool design people there. And I remember feeling like, oh, I'm experiencing this part of cool New York that I like never experienced.
So I totally know.
That kind of inspired the setting for the scene. But I love that the artist picked that one out because it's such fun. This is their first party when they go to this really cool loft in Tribeca. And
the window is so evocative. Yeah. And I love that too. I mean, I remember starting out in publishing, like you would go to like an editor's house or someone would have a book party, and I would always enter those spaces, and like the Zillow fangirl in me is like wanting to not talk to anyone and walk around and be like, I'm going to count the bathrooms. Like, what do we think is happening here? And so I love the fact that in all of these sex parties, they were like, the bedrooms are upstairs. And I was like, bedrooms, plural. Okay, damn.
I know someone asked me if the real estate in the book was real estate that I personally lived in, which is hilarious because like I was living in one apartment that had so many mice that I actually got a cat. Specifically.
I have considered this. I have actually moved from that kind of apartment. So, but I was thinking that this is related to the hygiene stuff, but I was like, all the lights are low and they're like naked in a New York building. Like, would I feel comfortable? Like, I feel like I'd be cool with the like naked hot tub and the sex stuff, but like barefoot in like New York City, like that might be a bridge too far for me.
That's very honest.
I feel like wearing open-toed sandals even, I'm like, okay, YOLO.
People could probably see from the street.
100%. That actually, this is a pitch for we'll ask you what you're working on next, but your third book, you need to write about the guy that like lives across the street from that house. That's like, why
did.
are all of these naked people? He's like calling the city multiple times. I think that's so funny. So are you working on a new project? And if so, can you reveal what it is about at all? Or what it's about right now? I
Yeah.
mean, that's like,
Yeah, exactly. Sadly, it's not a sequel. It
okay.
has nothing to do with swingers whatsoever. But I do think that one thing that I just love writing about is a bigger cast of characters, just really lovable but quirky kind of
Yeah.
people and their dynamics. So it's about a woman who moves in with a family that she doesn't know over Christmas. So it is actually a Christmas novel. I keep saying it's very similar to the family.
I did the fall lit chick show, so I was Christmas boots
Yes,
down for months. So I love it. I love it.
perfect. So that's what I'm doing right now.
That's so fun. Is it also set in New York City?
No, it's not. It's actually set in Chicago, which is interesting. It's been a challenge because I've never lived in Chicago. I did live in New York for 10 years. So when I left New York is when I really started writing this book. And it was really fun for me to revisit New York in my mind and through my writing. It is harder to write about a place I've never lived. I have some family there. So I've been kind of getting info from them, but that part's tough.
Yeah. Did you pick Chicago for a specific reason or
I
family
felt
stuff?
like, well, actually, yes, because it needed to have a winter. Because I feel like for a Christmas novel, you kind of need a winter.
You do. Sorry to Los Angeles and Florida and many parts of the Southern Hemisphere, but
Yeah.
Christmas means snow. You heard it here.
Yeah. So that was part of it, but I don't know, maybe I need to switch it back to New York.
Yeah. Well, I mean, one of my best friends, one of my bridesmaids, lives in Chicago, and I visited her and fell in love with Chicago. So you might have to do a little trip. It's like
Good
all
idea.
the things I like about New York, but like fewer of the things I didn't like.
Yeah.
But I also have been predominantly in the summertime, which I've heard is like false advertising. But
Yeah, I think that's true. I have never been in the winter either.
yeah. And you're in Los Angeles predominantly right now.
Yeah, that's where I
Cool.
live. Yeah. And
Have you heard any, like, is there a New York versus LA, like, swinger culture? Has that come up at all? Like, do people think like, oh, that's not how we do it here? Have you heard that feedback yet?
I haven't. That would be really interesting. When I was doing my research, it included researching like best sex clubs NYC. And I did the same thing for LA because I never wrote about a real place, but I did pull interesting things from
Yeah.
different ones that I read about and then created my own. And the ones out here in LA seem to be, as one would expect, a little bit more like she celebrity. Like you have to
Like a Goop sex club or something.
exactly, yeah. And you have to pay like $15,000 to be considered.
Yeah, it was $100 at the door for Nathan. I was like, okay, that's reasonable for a hot tub.
Yeah. I think they're pretty expensive, especially for men. I think if you go as a unicorn, like a woman alone, you
Hot
get
tip, you heard it here, folks. Yeah, that doesn't surprise me, but also I would be very nervous to do that. But maybe if you have location services turned on and you
yeah.
text besties, like, be well.
I think in some ways, and I did write about this in the book a little bit, sex clubs are probably like is safer than just going out to a bar and picking someone up because they have rules. Like
Yeah.
you're expected to behave and be kind and be respectful and get consent. Whereas when you're just at some random bar in New York City, a lot of people are not respecting people's boundaries.
Totally. And I mean, it just was interesting. I remember that line as well. And then it was like, okay, this term sex club, where you're entering a physical space and you're drinking and you're expecting sex with a stranger. How is that dissimilar to a bar? And then, then you kind of go in your mind like, oh, well, yeah, I think the rules is a big one.
Yeah.
And this idea that everybody that's in the environment is consented to being there and has expectations for what's going to go down.
Yeah.
Which I think is like pretty sexy, actually. Consent is sexy.
Yeah.
Especially in this book. Well, Taylor, it was so fun talking to you.
Yeah.
thrilled for you because this is seriously so much fun. I've had like so many people on social be like, oh my God, Swingers, like I have to read this book.
Yay,
Well,
please read everyone.
So much more than Swingers. Like really, I want to talk to people about it because I feel like there are just so many things that popped up for me that I think were super important. And I'm really excited for your next book, this Christmas book. That's going to be so much fun. We really appreciate everybody tuning in as usual.
Yes,
Thank you so much for taking a little breather with us. And this is just a reminder to, you know, hydrate and maybe put down your phone for like a second this evening. There's some amazing shows available to you on Netflix, etc., and incredible books, including The Lifestyle by Taylor Hahn, which is already out. You can get it in hardcover, probably audiobook. You don't read the audiobook, do you? Or
I do not, which is thank God.
Someone else brilliant reading The Lifestyle and audio, an ebook, and I'm thrilled to have met you, and this was so much fun. Congratulations on all of the like awesome buzz. It is so deserved.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning into Lit Chick, folks. It was great to see you all. I will probably go back into my hidey hole until we are back with the Christmas season, but we love that you're tuning into Lit Chick here on A Mighty Blaze. You can find us on Facebook and on Twitter and subscribe to our newsletter to find out all of the amazing guests that are upcoming here. If you go ahead and like our Facebook page, you'll be notified every time we go live. We love seeing you here. Thank you to Taylor and have an amazing night, folks.
Bye.